We are still on page 10 of your textbook. We're talking about the periodic table and those pretty colors, the blues, the greens, the tans, and we had said that they represent nonmetals, metals, and transition elements, the what we call metalloids. And when you look at it's kind of a funny, it looks almost like a castle, right? You know, it's got this funny shape. And the reason for that is that they have what they call groups. And all of the atoms all of the elements that are going to react in a similar manner, they put them vertically in what we call groups. So all of those columns that are present on that periodic table, they represent elements that are going to behave in a similar manner. So a group is a vertical column of elements that, as I said, behaves in a similar manner. And so we talked about metals, metalloids, and nonmetals. And there's lots and lots of things you can think of, to describe how a material might behave. But what do you think? What do you think that we're getting at when we talk about metals and nonmetals? Any ideas? Well, maybe you think of copper or aluminum, and you think, well, electricity, and you'd be right. Conductivity is one of the major issues, and that's one we're going to focus on here. After all, we're talking about cell phones. So not surprisingly, maybe what we're going to be talking about has to do with how tightly are the electrons held. So if you ever, like me, as a child, stuck your finger into a light socket, I did. I didn't like it. I pulled it out quick. You feel the energy, and what's happening is there are electrons that are being released from the metals. They're not held tightly to metals, and they're passing into my body. My hair must have stood on end, I don't know. But anyway, I pulled my finger out fast, so it didn't hurt me too much, maybe. But its conductivity is one of the major issues. And so when we talk about metals, they are very conductive. They hold their electrons in a manner where they can be released fairly easily. Now, nonmetals, these are things that do not do that. And so these would be what would be used for insulators. And so we have the conductive, non-conductive, the conductive metals, the non-conductive nonmetals, and then we have these metalloids, and they have characteristics that are somewhat similar to metals and nonmetals. And so that means they're in between. Now, when we talk about things like computers and cell phones and other high-tech devices, one of the things you hear regularly is semiconductor. What the heck is that? What is a semiconductor? So we had said, what is the difference between a metal and a nonmetal? And in this case, we're talking about conductivity. Semiconductivity, semiconductors. This is what these elements are really important in cell phones, computers, all of this high-tech stuff. So what do you have to do? In order to make all of this high-tech stuff, you have to manipulate atoms. And so even if cavemen or, people, maybe not that far back, but, Ben Franklin, he knew about electricity. But we didn't have computers or anything like this because we didn't have nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is the ability to work with things that are really, really small. And in the metric system, there's meters, millimeters, micrometers, and nanometers. Nanometers, we're getting smaller, smaller, smaller. Nanometers are really, really small. And so the ability to maneuver and manipulate atoms, nanometer size components, has led to these cell phones, right? So nanotechnology. All right.